Hi. If you can't tell by my obnoxious red sweater, I'm Ryan from St. Louis. I'm not originally from St. Louis, and I tell people back home in Nashville all the time that St. Louis is a great city to live in when the Cardinals are in the World Series. They've been in 4 times since I've been there. Sorry, Cubs fans. And it turns into a college town. People wear red all the time, and they have this interesting way of saying goodbye. They end a conversation with go-karts. So, I came to St. Louis to go to SLU. SLU is a Jesuit university. I stayed in St. Louis for the Vincentian family. My involvement is a little different. I work for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, and that was my gateway into the Vincentian family. And I wasn't going to take this angle for the talk, but it's just kind of was hitting me on the car right up here and then just sort of reinforced yesterday and today that there are a few of us who enter into the Vincentian family because we saw an opportunity to commit our professional lives to serving these charisms. And I don't think we talk about that as much, but I think it's going to become more and more common as communities and institutions change, the dynamics and the things that have kept them going for so long change, that more and more organizations will be looking to the laity, and already have, to a certain extent, to pick up those roles of leadership and carry on those charisms, which are so important. Another angle that I wanted to take today is I think everyone's fairly familiar with the society, and we got a really great overview of our founder. And Frederick and his life is very important to me. But I didn't see on the agenda time this weekend to talk about the Vincentian Family Collaborative Action Program, which was mentioned in this introduction, which I was able to take part in, along with RJ and Father Louis and some of the others who were here, and of course, Father Joe and Jess and Kelly. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about my experience there and how that relates to my overall experience and how I think something like that, an immersion experience, a retreat like the VFCAP, is important, yes, for the members of the Vincentian family, but particularly those of us who are employed by the Vincentian family. It was a very unexpected experience. When I found out that I was picked to go, I asked Roger a lot of questions. Well, what am I going to be doing? What results do you expect? What are the outcomes of this? And he's like, you're going to Paris. Settle down. And I just, with my personality, I typically roll with things pretty easily, so that was fine. But I couldn't help but wondering, particularly with the emphasis on systemic change, if Father Joe and his team were going to lock us in a room and say, okay, you're here from 20 different countries, you're in this room and don't come out until you've figured out the Vincentian family's response to global poverty. And so I was very worried that they had the wrong person. I, however, was very happy, and I expected that it was going to be a very different experience. And it exceeded all of my expectations. In my time, in my 7 years with the Society of St. Vincent de Paul in the Vincentian family, perhaps the most valuable thing that I've taken from it are the relationships that I've been able to build. These relationships help sustain me and struggle. Sometimes, as a younger member in the Vincentian family, and I don't think I'm alone in this, we wish things moved a little faster, or are not clear on obstacles and why things are the way they are, or encounter, and I think this perhaps is a little more common, great suffering. And it's very hard to see, and it's very hard to understand. It's very hard to process. And by having people who have seen it or are in the trenches with you, begin to at least get some perspective on it. Or for me, it helps my faith, which can be very challenged in doing this work, and understand how this work, how sometimes the suffering that I encounter at least makes sense in a spiritual context. And that's what I encountered in Paris. People from 20 other countries, all branches of the Vincentian family, and almost immediately, friendships were developed. And just in the warm embrace that some of us experienced yesterday, you can tell that those bonds are still very, very strong. When you think about collaboration, and that was the focus of the session, relationships are so key to that. And we spent a lot of time learning about how the founders and those who inspired all these different works of charity really worked intentionally on the relationships. We heard last night how important that is to Frederick, particularly with his students. I'm amazed at all he was able to do in 40 years and how important relationships were to him. I think oftentimes relationships can be lost in the work and the day in, day out doing, answering the urgent need in front of us. And by taking some time out and going over and developing these new relationships, I was reminded that that really is at the, I think, I could be wrong, really at the foundation for being successful, I think, in the systemic change initiative. You know, I came home and I looked at the conferences that I help support, and there's so many that the really good ones are friends first. And those that need a lot of help, they almost work in shifts. Like, okay, you're doing it this week and I'm doing it next week, and then I'm taking 3 weeks off and I don't want to hear from you. But to really advance these very ambitious goals and initiatives, which are certainly needed, how important this Vincentian family is. And when I was able to see it firsthand and really immerse myself in it, I was reminded how important it is. So if Father Joe were to say, you know what, Ryan, we are going to try to come up with that global plan, or just a project, and I think probably we should to a certain extent, I would say I'm in, because I know RJ, and I know RJ's got a big heart, and I know the skills that he brings. He's got a good singing voice, and I want to be with him and Jess and Kelly, and I've seen their skills, and I'm willing to take on this extra work because we know it's needed, but I know the people I'm going to be working with will be there with me to help us through the challenges. And that's just been my experience throughout the society, my time in the society, my time with the Vincentian family, and particularly as a young person who's encountering things for the first time, who's developing and growing. While I was over there, the relationship that surprised me the most was the connection I felt with our Vincentian saints. And I was not expecting that. I knew it would be great to go to all these historical sites, and we touched them all. We saw them all. Well, all the big ones. And there are a lot. One we got locked out of. But the last one that really impacted me was going to the tomb of Blessed Frederick O Sanam. I really relate to him. He's a husband and a father. I'm a husband and a father. He was a college professor. I have a job. Well, I mean that in terms of the different roles. But I said that not necessarily to be funny, but just there's a lot of responsibility that a layman can have in the church, and any one of these things can take all of our time and energy in order to do it well. And walking down into that tomb, and I didn't know this, his tomb is right next to a crypt that has, I think, 400 martyrs from the First Revolution. People who stood up for the faith and were rewarded with a trip out a window or a guillotine or some painful death. And I never thought of Frederick this way, and I don't know, I mean, Ralph might be able to tell us more, but 40 even then is an awfully early age to die. And you wonder if he just totally emptied himself. And in a way, that's another form of martyrdom, or at least mortification, and that Frederick gave everything he had. And am I willing to do that? And I was really pondering this and thinking a lot about it, and that the trip down to that crypt and to see his tomb really impacted me. And that night, we went back to the CM Mother House, and I was sitting in the chapel there where Vincent's body is venerated. And all of a sudden, I had this experience where I felt very, very close. I was all alone in this room, a very close connection to the Vincentian family, but particularly to Frederick and Vincent and Louise and Rosalie, whose biographies I know very, very well. But I've never considered them an active collaborator or someone that has an active relationship in my life. I went to Catholic school, St. Vincent de Paul, pray for us, and before every meeting I know about the communion of saints. But it's the first time I really felt it and got it, and that they know me. They know me by name, and they're rooting for me and for us and praying for us. And it was just a great moment of peace and grace, and it left very quickly and went back, and as moments like that tend to do. And I don't share that with you to show off, that Ryan Carney is some great mystic, far from it, but only that was completely unexpected. And if I were to have given a talk on my VFCAP experience when I got back, I would not have mentioned that at all. I would not have mentioned that because it took all this time in between Am I out? Okay, wow. For that to really resonate inside me. And so I'll close with this point in terms of involving youth and young adults. Expect the unexpected. I thought when I came back from Paris that I was going to, and I am doing this, but the most important thing for me was the 5 virtues, and I'm going to use the 5 virtues to help my team at the society better understand our place, use these virtues to help in our collaborative efforts with people in St. Louis. And we are doing that, and it's very important. But for me personally, what I got out of it, I always think back on that moment, and I'm not sure what it's doing in me, but remembering that this is a journey. And when involving younger people, I started when I was 23, I'm 30 now, things change. Life changes. You encounter things that you don't expect. And I think sometimes we can be frustrated when reaching out to youth and young adults, because we're like, well, we did this project, and I don't know what we got out of it. I don't know if they're going to be members. I don't know if they're going to come back. Sometimes seeds are planted, and they just need time. And I think that's often the case. But there are a lot of folks looking to do this type of work. They're hearing from Pope Francis. They're discovering it in their schools and universities. And they may not know it yet, but they're future Vincentians. So to invite them around the table, it's another act of service, because it's not just another warm body filling in and perhaps taking over in a long line of succession, but it's giving to us an opportunity to grow and experience and have these moments of grace that you just completely unexpected and go off like a time bomb months later and completely change everything. Not to overstate it, but I think you get my point. So we're out there. Go get them. Go Carts.